Hey slashers, ghouls, and freaks. Just a quick question for you. Do you ever grow tired of using the same old rusty tools for your mass slaughter? Are you sick of getting outsmarted by those pesky teenagers? Always getting your blade stuck instead of making that clean cut? Are you in desperate need of an upgrade to your arsenal? If so, our friends over at Hellfire Slaughterers have just what you need. Adamantium-infused weapons. That's right, ghoulies and bloodsuckers. Hellfire Slaughterers have scoured the ends of the earth and put an end to the ferocious mutant Wolverine. They extracted the adamantium from his bone structure and have now created the most indestructible weapons on the planet. Machetes, throwing knives, harpoons, they even have bear traps. So head on over to 56 Hellfire Slaughter Lane and get your hands on these limited supplies today. Those pesky runts won't even know what hit them. These weapons are so strong even superheroes can't stop them. Hellfire Slaughterers cannot be held liable for any mass bloodshed accrued from the use of these weapons. Get them today. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Everything But the Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Tony Saurus Rex, and in just a few moments, we're going to throw it away to a very special interview with Natasha Pascetta from Fangoria magazine, the #1 magazine for horror since 1979. If you're not familiar with Natasha, she is the director of digital production for Fangoria magazine. She's also directed the film Road Trash, the short film that's around a lot of conventions, and she'll be talking about that during the interview. She'll also be talking about the history of Fangoria, how she got started with the company, a little bit of personal stories from what she did before she got drawn into horror, and a lot of really cool things, a lot of interesting stories. Natasha was a blast to have on the show. I think you guys will really enjoy her. Before we get started with that, I do have a couple shout outs to mention. I want to mention a couple people who really helped me out this week, as if you guys follow me on Twitter at TonySaurusRex, spelled R-E-K-S, then you'll know that I had a little bit of a down week earlier in the week. I was struggling with a few things mentally and just feeling a little down on myself. And there was a few select people who really went out of their way to help encourage me and inspire me to keep going and really help me to lift up and to stick to my guns, so to speak. One of those people was Candy. She also has a YouTube. You can find her on Twitter at, I believe her Twitter is KHANDYYY_, so it's 3 Ys. But definitely check her out. She's an awesome person. I also have a friend named Cotton Candy who has been a full supporter from the beginning. She's said nothing but nice things about the show. She's really enjoyed the parody ads that I've included, and she really likes those. And there was another person who gave me a shout out and said that they liked listening to the show on their way home from work, on their commute, on their way home, and they really enjoyed what they've heard so far. So yeah, if you guys are listening to this episode and you are any of those people who I may not have mentioned by name because I don't remember your exact handles, just know that I really do appreciate all of you giving me the feedback and letting me know how you feel about the show. It really means a lot to me that you're listening, that you're supporting, and that you're enjoying the content I'm putting it out. Because like you guys should already know, I'm putting this out there in an attempt to help people escape the dark times that they might be facing, to give you guys some entertainment and something to listen to just help you kill time a little bit. I know that we all go through dark times in life, and sometimes we just need that escape, and hopefully this podcast can do that for you. But I also have an announcement to make. I am working on a very special project. It's probably a few months away. It's actually going to be 2 projects. The second one I'm not going to talk about just yet because it's going to be a little bit farther off. I'm waiting for it to come into fruition. But I'm going to be doing a podcast, a special episode of this podcast. But instead of just being exclusively Everything But the Podcast, it is also going to include 2 other people. One of them you should already know from last week's episode. That is Mike Woodard from Talk of Horror. He is going to be on this podcast as well. Another one is, her name is Mel. She is the host of 2 different podcasts. She did 2 Dead Chicks, which I believe is a podcast all about The Walking Dead. It's a really cool podcast. And she also did a podcast called Your BFF Podcast that I've fallen in love with over the past few days. It's a really cool podcast. She talks about a lot of struggles that she deals with, which kind of helped me relate to because a lot of them are the same struggles. And she also just has a super entertaining personality. She's super nice. She's really funny. So we have decided that we are going to collectively get together and do a special episode together. It is going to be an episode where we watch 3 really crappy horror movies. We're going to get together to discuss all the movies. At the end of the episode, we are going to collectively decide which one of these is the champion, so to speak, or the worst film out of all 3 of them. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to dub that episode Triple Threat because it is going to be 3 different podcasts, 3 different hosts, all coming together for a really cool thing. I'm really excited for it. I think you guys will enjoy it. So make sure you guys check that out. I'd also like to mention I have some awesome guests coming on for the month of August on future episodes. I have Kyle Hester, who is an actor known for his movie Zombie with a Shotgun, Preacher 6, and probably most notably the one that has recently released, I believe, is called The Chair, that he did alongside the late and great Roddy Piper. I think you guys will really enjoy that episode. I'm going to enjoy it as well. It's going to be a really fun interview. I also have an upcoming interview with Christian nerdcore rapper Eric Steven. He's going to be talking probably about comics and a lot of his influences. I'm sure he'll be talking about his faith and things like that. That's going to be a fun interview. At the very end of the month, I believe on the 31st, I will be interviewing Leslie. She's a paranormal investigator, and she has a show on YouTube called All Things Paranormal. That interview is going to be a lot of fun for any fans of the paranormal or the horror industry in general. I think you guys will really enjoy that. And also another person that I've met recently on Twitch and Twitter named Lenore. She is an independent artist. She's also working on her very own comic book called Troll Smasher. I think that's going to be a fun interview, and I really think you guys will enjoy that as well. So I wanted to just give you guys an idea of things that are coming up to look forward to on future episodes of the podcast. And without further ado, I will now throw it away to my exclusive interview with Natasha Pascetta, film director and also the director of digital production for Fangoria magazine. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know that from before you got started with Fangoria and before you started with the film directing and everything, you actually have a background in news and politics. What was it that made you decide to move from the news and politics over into horror, that drew you into horror, so to speak?
Yeah, so I worked in news and politics for about 10 years, and I just kind of hit a wall, during that, 9-10 year range, and I wasn't passionate about it anymore. And, I learned a lot of valuable lessons. I learned the arts of, how you tell an engaging story, especially, when you're dealing with real stories. And, that was a very valuable lesson to me. I learned how to, just craft and structure stories well from that experience. And I also learned a lot about production. I learned how to, write scripts, especially for television and radio. You need to get your most engaging information out there quickly, and as short amount of time as possible. So I learned a lot of valuable lessons from working in news and politics, but it was never like, I was never like a hardcore, I didn't live and breathe politics. I really didn't. I love being able to create content that was fun and engaging and, and creative. And that's where my passion really was. And I also loved horror movies. I'm a big horror nerd. So I thought, why don't I try to take the skills that I've learned in news and politics and try to apply them to my real passion, which was horror. So, I was working in Dallas, Texas, and I've been following this movie company that was here called CineSpace. And they've been doing a lot of really cool and fearless productions. Like they had done Bone Tomahawk with Kurt Russell. They did Brawl in Cell Block 99 with Vince Vaughn. And I just was amazed that this independent movie company right here in Dallas, Texas was making these amazing films. And so I was learning more about them. And then one day I read that they had bought Fangoria magazine. And I was like, oh my gosh, I need to talk to someone at the company and tell them that, I'm interested in what they're doing, and especially now with Fangoria, and that I think I'd be a good member of their team. And so, I sent an email, and about 2 days later, the CEO got back to me, which I was completely, surprised by. And, a couple more days later, I was working for them. So it really kind of was the right place, right time, for me. And I'm so lucky that I was able to transfer, from a completely different animal like news and politics into horror content creation, which I'm doing right now. I'm so thankful for that opportunity.
And speaking of Fangoria, this year marks the 40th anniversary of Fangoria, which is a pretty cool thing. I noticed that.
Yeah.
What was it? Wednesday, I think, was the official day.
Yes. Yes,
So
it was July 31st, 1979, the first issue of Fangoria went to print. And we did a whole big thing celebrating the 40th anniversary. And it's just amazing because, you know, we weren't part of that legacy. We've only been doing Fangoria since 2018, brought it back in 2018. So it's really cool for us as fans to look back and celebrate those 40 years and then also feel the immense privilege and honor to carry that legacy on in the future. So, the credit all goes to, Terry O'Quinn and Norm Jacobs, the creators of Fangoria, Tony Capone, Michael Gold. They really, ushered in that legacy and Bob Martin. And, they're the ones who deserve all the credit for the past, 39 years of Fangoria. And everyone who came after, like Chris Alexander and Rebecca Kendry. Like, it's just such an amazing legacy, and we're so honored that we get to, reap the benefits of, actually, being able to produce our favorite magazine again. So it's just a really cool thing to look back on, and, 40 years of behind the scenes of horror movies, like, it's incredible. And, I don't know where we would be as horror fans, if Fangoria wasn't here anymore. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing. There's a lot of horror actors. Like, I know listening to Casualty Friday, which we talked about before when they didn't have the audio issues, but like Kane Hodder, like, got his start because of Fangoria. So you hear stories like that and you realize how relevant Fangoria really is to horror fans and even some of the actors and actresses in the horror business as well.
Yeah, it's so amazing to hear from them, like what an impact it made on their lives. And, Kane is a great example. He says that Fangoria, put him in the spotlight, and it's just really cool to think that Fangoria helped launch, many of the careers of the people that we, revere right now. So, it's just an amazing magazine, and I can't wait to see what the next 40 years bring.
Right. And you also can't sell yourself short either, because I would like to note that you are a part of that legacy because you brought something back. If you guys hadn't done that, Fangoria might have just been gone and lost to the ages, but you've actually gone out of your way to bring it back and make sure that it stays relevant, which is, that to me means that you are definitely a part of the Fangoria legacy at this point.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, a lot of that goes to our CEO, Dallas Sonnier. He saved Fangoria. He really did. He saw that it was out of print, and he was a fan, and he was like, I can't let this die, and I'm in a position to be able to bring it back. So, and it's our editor, Phil Nobile Jr., Jess there, Ashley Detmering, everybody here, at Fangoria, we're all fans, So, we're just happy to carry that torch into the future.
Right. And it's also translated into other areas of media as well, which I want to get to in a second. But first, I do want to talk a little bit more of the magazine and perhaps what you think were some of the most significant issues in the history of the magazine.
Yeah. So it's been great. Like all this week we've been going back and looking at our favorite covers and our favorite articles. And, number 7 is with The Shining as Jack Nicholson as Jack Thornton on the cover. And number 7 is really significant because that was the first horror-centric magazine. Like before, up to 7, it had been like Godzilla, of course, from the first cover. They've been covering Star Wars because you have to remember that Starlog was actually, the parent magazine, was first. So Starlog was the sci-fi-centric magazine started by Norm Jacobs and Terry O'Quinn. And then they saw that, hey, people are really interested in horror movies too. We could make a horror magazine. But they really hadn't gotten into the rhythm of just horror up until number 7. So number 7 is definitely, I would say, a landmark issue in Fangoria's history. And man, like, one of my favorite covers is kind of an oddball because it's the bloody best of Fangoria. volume number 6, and it has CJ Graham and Alice Cooper on the cover for that fun photo shoot they did to promote Jason Lives. And I just love that so much because I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan. And I think that is like it reached like the apex of like 80s like horror and like, you know, rock and roll. Like just like everything I love is epitomized in that cover. So I love the Bloody Best of Fangoria Volume 6. And I also love issue number 2, even though that was not like, you know, during like the horror centric magazines. Issue number 2 had the first interview with Don Coscarelli talking about Phantasm, and this was in 1979. So it's really cool to like just pinpoint that article as like the start of, you know, this wonderful relationship between the Phantasm franchise and Fangoria, and to see like both a magazine starting out and a movie franchise starting out at the same time. It's just like, it's such a cool piece of history that I just love number 2 for that. And gosh, there's so many. Like I'm so privileged that I get to rifle through all of the issues all the time, every day, every week. So do you have a favorite issue?
Not yet, but I will soon when I finally get the new issue. Yeah, I didn't get it. Like I said, it eluded me almost my entire life, but finally I'm a subscriber, so now I can finally get my hands on one, and I'm looking forward to it. I would like to find a way to get a hold of back issues as well, because a lot of like the 80s era of horror movies is what always sticks in my mind, so I'd like to be able to find some of those issues and get my hands on them.
Yeah, eBay, man. eBay is treasure trove of Fangoria back issues, and hopefully one day we'll be able to, you know, recreate them and sell them again, but I think that's a little down the line. But yeah, you can find them, you know, pretty cheap on eBay and Etsy and everywhere. And even thrift stores and comic book stores should have some good back issues.
Right. And I still have October to look forward to with the first new issue. So I do get, that's going to be special for me. Yeah. And that's going to be special for me because it'll be my first issue. Even though I'm going to be 32 years old in September, me finally having that first issue in my hands is going to be like a special historical moment in my life, I guess you could say.
Yeah, thank you so much for supporting us. We truly appreciate it. And I hope you enjoyed the new issues. They're really quite a different animal. When we brought Fangoria back, we wanted to bring it back in a really big way. We wanted to keep it, you know, familiar. We wanted to bring back that familiar experience to everyone, but we also wanted to upgrade the magazine. So each of the new issues is over 100 pages. It has heavy cardstock. So it's a thick magazine. It is a heavy thing. And it's beautiful. You can just display it on like a coffee table. It just looks beautiful, and it's a nice thing to collect, and it's something that you'll have forever. It really is. It's not like a throwaway magazine at all. And we really wanted to up the content. There's only like a few ads per issue, so you're not getting inundated with like mindless advertising. So we really brought it back in a special way, I think, and I hope everyone's enjoying the new issues.
And that's something fans really have to admire as well, is that you decided to stick with a strictly physical release. Like a lot of companies, magazines, comics, and stuff like that have moved over into that digital platform where you can read a lot of their content digitally and get your hands on it that way. But you guys decided to stick with, you can only get this if you buy the physical copy, which I think is actually something to admire, because you're still managing to stay relevant as a physical copy, where a lot of magazines, comics, they're kind of timeless, but magazines in general don't usually last 20 years, more or less 40, and yet here you guys are still lasting all this time and still staying relevant.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that was, you know, a very easy question to answer early on was, you know, do we provide a digital component to the magazine, or do we just go with print? And we decided to just go with print because that's what people remember. You know, they remember the experience of getting their Fangoria in the mail, or going to Barnes and Noble and opening up, you know, Fangoria. It's like you literally have to use, you know, your hands and you have to use your eyeballs, and it's like a whole experience. And we didn't want to just like put out that content on digital. We wanted really to recreate that experience of when you first opened a Fangoria magazine. And I think it was, I think it's been a really nice way to honor the legacy of Fangoria by keeping it that way.
I agree. There's always something different about having that physical copy of something in front of you as opposed to just reading it on the internet or seeing pictures somewhere. Like, being able to actually hold it in your hands has always made it more special.
Absolutely.
Now, you've also kind of crossed over into other areas. You do podcasting as well on the Fangoria Podcast Network, and you were just talking about Phantasm earlier, so I know that you've hosted the Class of 79 and the Class of 89 podcasts, which I've really got drawn into the past couple weeks. Like, the Class of 79 made me want to go back and watch Phantasm again, so I'll probably do that this weekend, because I haven't seen it in so long, but it made me want to revisit the series. So how did that come to be, like, you starting podcast and deciding to get into that?
Yeah, so thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. It's kind of cool. Like I mentioned, I worked in news and politics, and I mostly worked on talk radio. So I was a producer of, a pretty big talk radio show for a long time. And to come back and sort of do that same job, but talking about horror is amazing. And I was never on mic, so I was always, writing the scripts and, coming up with content, what we would do for the day. So it's really cool to be able to also be in that producer role again and also be on mic this time. So it's come full circle for me, really. It's a dream come true, but I'd always wanted to, talk about horror in any capacity. So I'm really thankful that I get to do it through the Fangoria Podcast Network and bring you guys Class of 79 and Class of 89, which celebrates, movies turning 40 and 30 this year. And, for selfish reasons, I did a whole long series on Phantasm because it is my favorite movie. And I was so excited to be able to interview Don Coscarelli and Reggie Bannister and Michael Baldwin and Paul Pepperman, the producer of Phantasm. So it really was just like awesome for me to do. And I hope everyone enjoyed, that little time capsule. My hope is that the Class of podcasts serve as like an oral time capsule for people to go back and get a glimpse inside what it was like to make those movies, because what I'm running into now for Class of 79 especially is, a lot of people are gone now who made those movies because it's 40 years old. So I'm trying to get everyone as I can. I have an upcoming series on Alien, which is going to be really cool. And, I ran into that with Alien. Like, not a lot of people from the production are still around. So my hope is to bring something, that will be able to be shared well into the future, and people will be able to go back and listen to what it was like to make these movies for the people who made them. So it's just been a blast. I've had such fun. I just interviewed Danielle Harris last night, and she was a blast. I'm doing a series on Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And it's just really fun for me to get to talk to my heroes, really. It's quite selfish, but I hope everyone is kind of enjoying it too.
I know exactly how you feel, because me starting up the new podcast and kind of going over into more of the horror side of things for some episodes. Now, I cover everything. That's why we're about anything and everything. But transgressing into the horror and meeting like you and the other people that I've met that have that love for horror, it's something about the horror community as a whole. Like, everybody is so like loving and polite and caring. At least everybody that I've met so far that I've come into contact with.
It's really it's really something about the horror community. They're very loving and tolerant and just, kind community. They really are. Like, everyone I meet at conventions or, anyone who reaches out, talking to you, Tony, like, everyone is just so nice and like just the best people. And I know from the outside, people look at horror fans as like, oh, it's Black T-shirt club, and they worship Satan, or like they're all about like violence and killing people, or not like for real, but in movies.
Right.
But it's like, it couldn't be further from the truth. It really couldn't. We're just like the nicest dorks ever.
And that's the funniest thing too, because they did the same thing with like metal back in the 80s. Like, it was just everybody, like, they just they take it at face value because of what you listen to or what you enjoy, and they don't really focus on getting to know you as a person to see that you're not the way that they think you are. You just tend to like different
absolutely.
things.
Yeah, I mean, like, my boyfriend is the lead guitarist and singer of death metal band Arsis, and like people, like he he does the roar, like, growly voice, and super fast, like crazy technical melodic death metal, and he's got tattoos and everything, and people think like, oh, like he's an imposing figure, but like he is like a teddy bear, like the nicest person I've ever met in my life. So like, as a community, like death metal, like heavy metal, horror fans, like we are just so chill compared to like some other, like subcultures. Like, don't be afraid of us. we're nice, I promise.
And it almost goes hand in hand too. Like a lot of horror and metal, like it almost ties together with the storytelling, like the way that like metal write their lyrics and their storytelling.
Yeah.
It almost all ties together, which is so funny in the way.
Absolutely. There's a whole subgenre of heavy metal horror, which actually Rebecca McKendry talks about in her latest podcast on Nightmare University, and it's a subgenre that I love. Like Trick or Treat is one of my favorite movies of all time, and that's like, I would say is probably the best of the heavy metal horror movies. But yeah, like I love that marriage of like metal and horror, because they're just very similar, and when they get together, I think it's awesome. Like, have you ever seen Black Roses?
I haven't seen Black Roses, but there is a band. I don't know if you've heard of them, but I got to interview the singer for the band. There's a horror punk band called Grave Robber that I've absolutely fallen in love. And they are actually the first episode that I recorded this year was Wretched from Grave Robber.
Cool.
And that was a really cool interview. Now, their stuff is a little bit different because it's horror punk, but everything has some kind of meaning behind it. So, like, if you pay attention to the lyrics, there's always some kind of real life story going on within the lyrics, but at face value, like the song I Want to Kill You Over and Over Again, it sounds like a straight up horror song, but it has like Christian faith beliefs to it. So it's completely different from what you actually expect. Yeah, that's what I really like about bands like that they're pushing it. They're sticking to that horror genre, but they're changing, like their lyrics have a deeper meaning to them, which I think is really cool. And they become one of my favorite bands over the years just because of that alone.
Oh, cool. I'll have to check them out. Yeah, because like, as I mentioned, I'm a huge Alice Cooper fan. So, a lot of his stuff is really interesting to me because it's, scary, and people think he's horror, like, creepy guy, but like he's like the most chill guy ever, like golfs all the time, is, very Christian. And if you listen to a lot of his songs, like Grew Up, his dad was like a minister. If you listen to his songs, there's like so much like, Christian influence in it. And it's so funny to like, go to a show and everyone's like rocking out and to know, like, I mean, just look at Hey Stupid. Like, Hey Stupid is like calling out, like, people who are getting into drugs and
Right.
overdoing it on alcohol. He's like, guys, wake up. And that's become like an anthem. And I don't think a lot of people think about it as like he's saying like, hey, you guys are being idiots.
Right.
Which is really cool. So I look to him as someone who's been like super successful with, still having that like dark, mysterious, like horror centric stage show, but also being like a really great person and, promoting, being a good person. So, yeah, I totally get it.
Yeah, something funny about Alice Cooper is I think we actually have a local radio station in the Pennsylvania area. I don't remember if it's the one specifically for Lewistown, but I know it's Pennsylvania in general, and he does a show on that. I remember hearing it at one time, and I was like, that's Alice Cooper. And it was
it's nice with Alice Cooper. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a syndicated show. Yeah, he plays on quite a few radio stations. So yeah, that show's cool. I like that show.
Yeah, when I randomly heard it on like a local station, though, I was like, "What?" And then it kind of made me stop for a second because I got confused. Yeah. I was like, it almost made you think, like, is he like around, like it's somewhere close nearby? And then you realize, okay, he's probably on multiple radio stations. But when you first hear it, it sounds like he's just on your local radio station. It's like a big thing.
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of radio. It's kind of, and that's what drew me to radio initially. was that it sounds like, the host is talking to you. Like, radio really was a companion for me growing up. My dad I used to ride in the car with my dad, and we would listen to talk radio, and we would listen to the classic rock stations. So that was kind of my upbringing, was, talk radio and classic rock. And my dad would, teach kind of like history lessons through the songs. Like, I can clearly remember him, talking about the Rolling Stones, like, Sympathy for the Devil, and like he would be like, there are historical moments in this song, and then he would pick them out and then he would tell me about them. And it was my greatest education was, in the passenger seat of my dad's car, where we listened to talk radio and classic rock. So that is the beauty of radio. And I know I went off on a tangent there about radio, but I will always have a soft spot for radio. And, it's a great educator and it's a great companion.
And don't worry about the tangent. It's perfectly fine. We all do it. It kind of comes with podcasting sometimes. You start talking and then you just keep going. So it kind of... Now, I know we don't have a lot of time left, but we didn't get to touch much on your film Road Trash. And you were talking about your boyfriend being in the death metal band. I remember that you mentioned that he was the werewolf in Road Trash. Now, our listeners don't know this because this was our previous conversation. But I would like to give you time to talk about that film and maybe like your inspiration for Road Trash, how it came to be, and also how Heather Langenkamp from Nightmare on Elm Street series got involved with you on that.
Yeah. Thanks for bringing it up. Road Trash is my little 5-minute werewolf short film that I did in 2017, and then it came out in 2018. But like, it was my first short film ever. I was still working in news and politics at the time, and it was kind of my transition. Like, I was like, I need to do horror. I need to do something. And I had, no money. I had, no real resources, but I had an idea, and I wanted to give myself the gift of trying it. It's like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to try it. I'm never going to have enough money to do it. So I might as well just, do it and have to face the consequences. So I was, really lucky to have a really supportive boyfriend, and thank God he, didn't kill me for making him wear a very hot werewolf suit in the Texas heat, for filming. And he also did all the music for Road Trash. So it was really like a gift to myself and a gift to my boyfriend to try out composing for film, because he had never done that before. So, it's a fun little short film. It's not the best thing ever made, but, I think it's still really cool. And just a short synopsis is, a girl is addicted to burying roadkill, and she can't stop herself from picking up every dead animal she sees on the road and giving it like a full burial. Like, this girl is nuts. So, she picks up something one day that she doesn't recognize and buries it, and it turns out that she buried a werewolf by accident. And the werewolf wasn't dead, and he's like super pissed at her for burying him. And then he proceeds to stalk her around the town that she lives in. And it was just something I thought we could do. We just shot over a long weekend, and Heather got involved because I'm also in the movie, so I play the girl. And I did not feel confident enough in giving myself dialogue when I wrote the script, because I'm like, I can't act, I can't pull this off. So I thought, well, to move the story along, why don't we do it as like a narration, and then people will know what's going on. And so I had a couple people in mind. I made a list of like, who's my dream person to get for the narration of this movie. And Heather was number one. And so I literally just reached out to a contact I found online, and she amazingly was interested. So it was, I guess, another example of the right place, right time. And she was amazing. And a couple months later, I flew out to Hollywood for the first time ever. I'd never been to California, never been to Hollywood. I flew out to Burbank and rented a recording space. And when I was there, I was like, she's not going to show up. She's totally not going to show up. Like, this isn't real. Like, she's not going to show up. And then she showed up. And I was like, I was floored that she did. And for 2 hours, we just recorded her lines, and she was just an angel to work with. Just amazing. Her dreams come true. And yeah, so it's really about putting herself out there and taking risk and like being like, you know, I had no expectation that Heather Langenkamp would agree to do my movie, but for some reason she was interested and said yes. And now we have a cool little, you know, werewolf short film with narration by Heather Langenkamp. So you just never know until you ask.
Exactly. That's one thing that I like to say, is to always take the shot, because you never know. Like, it's something that could happen won't happen if you never take the chance and ask.
Exactly.
And it also kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier too, with how kind and like accepting the horror community is. Like, you reached out and she was willing to do it. Like, that kind of ties into what we were talking about with that, how kind people are, and like they appreciate you actually taking the time to reach out to them. A lot of people are too afraid to do that, and they don't realize that they're people just like us, and that they most of the time actually appreciate us reaching out to them.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I'm so thankful that you reached out to us, you know, to give, you know, me this opportunity to talk about Fangoria and, you know, my journey in horror. And I hope that it inspires other people to go after their dreams. You know, I didn't think I could make that jump from politics and news into horror. But I was willing to try, you know? So I think, you know, just take shots, take so many shots. I've failed so many times and will continue to fail so many times, but, you know, you don't progress or, you know, move forward in life if you just don't, you know, take that shot. And people, you know, are receptive. They're more receptive than you think. So, I would just say, you know, take as many shots as you can.
Now, one thing I would like to touch on is, where can people view your film, Road Trash? And will there be any other films? Like, will you decide to work on anything else in the future? Obviously, you don't have to go into great detail about that, but people will probably want to know if you're going to keep doing film.
Yeah, I really hope to. I'm working on a script right now, so I'm hoping to get that done soon, and that's another short film. And Road Trash is still making the film festival circuit right now, but I'm hoping around October, November it should be available online for people to watch. But you can find out more about Road Trash. I have a Facebook for it. It's this Road Trash Film. And also you can follow me on Instagram at Natasha Pascetta, and, you know, follow along with my Fangoria shenanigans and other fun things. But yeah, I'd love to make more movies. I definitely would. And, I hope to be able to do that.
And I'm going to throw one final question out there for you that has nothing to do with anything we've been talking about.
Okay.
I like to throw a random in there. Would you ever spend an entire night at a haunted location?
Oh, absolutely. I'm a huge Ghost Adventures fan. I love Zach Bagans. I watch Ghost Adventures religiously. So I would totally spend a night at a haunted location. You know, I really haven't had that opportunity yet, but if Zach Bagans was like, hey, come on a Ghost Adventures show with me, I'm totally there. So.
That would be so cool. I love a lot of those shows as well, and I know that they're doing the resurgence of Ghost Hunters soon, which I'm super excited about. And then I think Ghost Hunters is Grant Wilson and his entire new team, and then Ghost Nation is Jason, Dave Tango, and Steve. So they're both doing two different shows. But it's cool to see those come back. I'm a huge fan of those shows. But to be honest, I probably wouldn't spend a night in a haunted location. I'll just stick to watching it on TV.
Oh man, I mean, I just like, you know, most of the time, is anything going to happen? Probably not. So,
right.
It's just you scaring yourself with what could happen. But, you know, I've had like some paranormal encounters, but like not enough to really like, you know, I believe in ghosts, but nothing to like really like, I don't have like that great story. So I'm open to having that story one day.
And if you do, contact me. Let's do another show about it.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll actually be interviewing a paranormal investigator. She's an independent paranormal investigator. She has a YouTube channel called All Things Paranormal. Her name is Leslie, and I'll be interviewing her in a few weeks. So I'm trying to save my paranormal story experience for that episode. So any listeners are just going to have to wait a little longer. But
oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. I love that stuff.
Yeah. But thank you, Natasha. I know that you're kind of strapped for time. Thank you so much for coming on and joining me today. It's been really has been a blast. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. It's been a lot of fun hearing about the history of Fangoria and other things. But, wait, there's one more thing I had to ask. The story that you told me on Monday, you got into the story about the zombie photo shoot and the coffee with the clothes. I want to give you a chance to talk about that because I really was in love with that story that you told me. So before we do end, I do want you to talk about that so the listeners can still hear that story and they don't miss out on it.
Yeah, definitely. So, you asked me about issue number 2 with Joe Bob on the cover, and I'm a huge Joe Bob fan. And, it was really cool because I actually helped, produce that photo for the volume 2, issue number 2 cover. And I was lucky enough to get to go to New York for that photo shoot. And, so we were running around all day trying to get everything ready for Joe Bob. And the photographer, very talented guy, he saw that I brought some zombie clothes for our zombies, and our zombies were played by these amazing kids from SVU, and they were just so excited to be involved. And so I brought them all like these, plaid shirts that had been, thrown in the dirt, to make them look like zombies, and aged them a little bit. And so the photographer looks at them and he's like, they're not yet zombified like I would like them to be. So I'm like, okay, what are you thinking? And he's like, they need to be aged like a little more. And he's like, maybe like get some coffee and make them, dirtier and like brown them up and stuff. And so I'm like, okay. So then my producer, instincts kick in and it's like, how can I get this done in like an hour in New York City? So there was a coffee shop next door to the theater that we shot in. And so I ran in there and, I must have looked like an insane person, but I was like, hey, do you have any like coffee you're about to throw out? and the barista was like, yeah. I'm like, well, I want to buy it from you because I need to dump these costumes in a vat of coffee. And he's like, okay. Still looking at me like I'm a crazy person. But, he gave me a whole bucket of coffee. The only thing was the coffee was still hot and it was like steaming hot, but I didn't have time. Like I said, I had like an hour. And so I threw the shirts in there, like burning my hands the whole time, like trying to like wring them out and stuff. And then I had to find a laundromat to dry them in. And so here I am schlepping around this bucket filled with coffee and shirts and throwing the shirts into the dryer in the laundromat. And this is New York City, so like no one in the laundromat is looking at me like I'm insane because they all like don't care. They're all doing their own thing. I'm like dripping coffee everywhere. It was insane. And so I'm losing time the whole process. I'm running out of time. And so I'm drying the shirts and they're not getting dry enough. And at one point I just have to be like, screw it. Like they're a little damp. Oh well, they have the right look now. And so I come back and actually our editor-in-chief, Phil, he is also a zombie on the cover. And poor Phil and the rest of the SBU kids are wearing these damp, gross t-shirts in the photo, just because like I didn't have time to dry them all the way. So they're like soaking wet, they've got full, zombie prosthetics on their face. Everyone was such a trooper because it was like a whole day process. And then, finally Joe Bob arrives and it's like, okay, this is all worth it. All this running around is worth it. And, and that's what you see on the cover. You see, just know that all of those zombies are, pretty uncomfortable and wet and like damp with coffee all over them. So.
That's so funny too, because it's like that level of thinking on your feet and total commitment to not even like a film, like you'll hear a lot of that with movies and stuff like that, but a photo shoot. Like you guys are taking the photo shoot so seriously and want to make it so good that you're committing that level of commitment to it and thinking on your feet creatively. Like, how can we make these look? Oh, let's just use coffee. Like, it's such a funny story.
Yeah. It's whenever you're faced with that stuff, either on a movie or, a photo shoot, Like, you really have to use whatever you have at your disposal at that time to make it work. So, next time you need to age something really quickly, coffee is a good idea, but it's going to take a little bit, So, I also use, brown dry shampoo, which I got at Dwayne Reed, which is a pharmacy, in New York City. And I got a bunch of cans of brown dry shampoo, and I also sprayed that on the shirts to, make them look a little crunchier, and also sprayed it in the zombie's hair to mess it up. So these are just some of the tricks of the trade that you learn along the way on how to make people into zombies. So.
That was an awesome way to end the episode. Thank you so much for joining me, Natasha. I would love to do this again sometime, so hopefully we can get together and do this again. And next time won't be an audio issue, it'll actually be a part 2.
Yeah, no, this was great, Tony. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity, to talk all things horror.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun talking to you about your film and the podcasting and a lot of things. There were a couple things that I probably didn't get around to asking, but I realized that we were running out of time, so I will squeeze them in the next time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you, and you have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Hey everybody, this is Tony Saurus Rex here again, and letting you know, if you just heard, that was the end of the interview with Natasha Pascetta. However, that is not the end of this episode. I've included a special little bonus at the end here. It is another parody ad that Spoken Truth again worked on the beat and the effects for. I really think you guys will enjoy it. It's something special I did exclusively for this Fangoria episode, sticking along the horror theme. I do want to give a quick shout out and thank you exclusively to Natasha Pascetta as well as Fangoria for going out of their way to do this interview with me. It really means a lot that they took the time to do this. I really appreciate it, and I really had a blast. I hope you guys enjoyed it as well. But I do want to mention, if you're looking for beats or any kind of production effects, anything like that, make sure you look up Spoken Truth. If you need his Twitter, I will write it in the description of this episode, as it's a very kind of confusing handle on Twitter, but I'll write it out for you guys. Just don't steal my ideas. I will use it in a future Rex's Rage segment if you steal any of my ideas, and I'll be very angry at you. You will not appreciate it. No, it's fine, guys. Yeah, make sure you hit him up. I really think that he's a cool dude. He's somebody that I've worked with for a while now, ever since Masters of the Underground. I really think you guys will enjoy it. But yeah, without further ado, I'm going to throw it away to this special parody ad, and I will catch you guys next week. Make sure you all stay Rexy. Hey there, camp counselors and summertime teens. Are you exhausted from the endless sprints trying to escape the grip of chainsaw and machete-wielding creeps? Are you growing tired of seeing your friends get slaughtered time after time? Do you wish you had a way to stand up to those undead monsters without getting brutalized yourself? Well, my friends, your prayers have been answered with Krypton Skin. Krypton Skin has worked very closely with Superman himself to develop this carefully crafted costume. Designed to look exactly like your everyday clothes, these outfits will give any would-be slaughterer a run for their money. These outfits are infused with Kryptonian DNA and are virtually indestructible. They can even stop a speeding bullet. Just don't come into contact with any kryptonite. Krypton Skins, stand up to those creepers and teach them a lesson they won't soon forget.
Bitch.